Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Fun Games Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Lib, today with my wonderful co-host,
Markee Dragon, also known as Marcus Eikenberry in real life.
And Marcus, today we have with us a very special guest. Why don't you do the introduction for us?
I'd like to introduce Jacques Rousseau, and he is well, actually, I don't know what your official title is, but I know you're creator of Arkfall, the game, NeoJac, the company, and you guys even created a game engine once upon a time.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we've been doing a few things actually.
Yeah. So, Jacques, we just wanted to invite you here today because we know you've had a lot of experience in the video game industry. You've had a lot of ups and downs, and I think that you probably have gained a lot of wisdom that you can share with others who are looking at creating a video game or doing something like building an engine or just even operating a company, or even on the more extreme of moving to another country.
That's correct, yes.
So, Jacques, where are you from?
Well, I was born in South Africa, Durban. I don't know if any people know about Africa, but Durban is like a coastal town. Moved to Canada about, it's been 20 years now, nearly 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's interesting.
So as a kid, how was your life in South Africa? I don't know whether or not I can envision that. Was it good? Was it hard? What was it?
Well, first thing I would say is when I grew up, I'm not a young man, so obviously when I grew up, we didn't have computers or anything like that. So
Mm-hmm.
pretty much my whole youth, I never touched a computer because that didn't exist for us yet. And especially in South Africa, we had a lot of sanctions and stuff against us at that stage. So we couldn't compete as well on the markets and stuff like that. So, but
Right.
other than that, it was pretty good actually. You played a lot outside. You didn't stay indoors like these days. And yeah, we had a good time growing up. It wasn't that bad at all.
That's awesome.
So when you say that you had like sanctions and stuff, was that over? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, from past history of South Africa is like apartheid. Does that have something to do with it, or?
Yeah. So I mean, South Africa had apartheid and stuff like that going on, right? Although when you were growing up there, it wasn't as bad as a lot of I would say the world would see it. The certain ways. Like I had lots of friends that were black friends and stuff, and it wasn't the way it was portrayed across the world. Never ended up being exactly what was happening in South Africa.
Right.
Yeah, always more dramatic on the news.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, they really went to town with it.
So, when did you get into computers? Let's say.
Well, I would say you would. Now we have different school systems there, so I have to think now, in which how would it compare to you guys? I would say in Canada, I would have been in grade 11.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Look at Canada systems. My friend, one of my best friends, actually, he got a ZX Spectrum. That's pretty much what we start off with.
Wow.
And I used to go play a lot by his house so we can play around with the ZX Spectrums and write little programs and stuff. Although I have to say I'm not a programmer at all. I do more the graphics and management side of the business. But yeah, so that's when we start getting into games and so on, and just went from there.
And so, how did you end up moving to Canada?
Well, at that stage, it was my current ex-wife and her family. Everybody moved down here, so we moved also, and it was also a little bit safer because this was just before apartheid ended, and I would say it was very close to when Nelson Mandela also became president and so on. But the violence was crazy there. Like that's the other side of it too. South Africa, people don't understand. I grew up in the area that I could see the transition between what it was and what it is currently. And the violence like just started increasing over the years. when I was younger, there wasn't that much violence at all. There was no violence pretty much, and then it just started increasing big time. I must say, I had a gun to my head a few times in South Africa when I was older.
Wow.
You know, so yeah, there's two sides to a story. You know, like you can't blame the people that commit the crimes because they want to eat, but also it's not safe for you.
Right.
when I came to Canada, and the first time I see somebody jogging, a lady jogging, I think it was 9 o'clock at night, I was like, what's going on? Yeah, you can't do that in South Africa. You know, you don't leave your house after 6 o'clock at night. You know, I mean, all the windows there also had burglar guards and stuff like that on. You know, like you had a like a jail. It felt like a jail when you lived there in the end of the era when they started doing the transition to the new government and stuff. Because you had a burglar guard inside your house, in between the hallways, so that people breaking in can't get to you when you're sleeping.
Right. Wow. I'd like to ask, when you were growing up, did you have access to video games and stuff there, or did that come later?
Well, let me put it this way: when I was 5, 6 years old, we didn't have television there. So I've seen it from no television to full computers, you know, in my lifespan.
Right.
So, and I mean, South Africa was always a little bit behind everybody else in technology stuff in that sense at that stage, you know. And so the only time I really started seeing, like I said, anything to do with any computers and so on was when I was about 16 years old or so, 14 years old. Yeah, it wasn't as it is in America and so on, where everything was, you know, being pushed out very quickly and stuff like that.
Right. Interesting.
I think it sounds like it was a big culture shock for you, but really in a positive way moving to Canada.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of advantages moving to Canada and so on, like safety, but also, you know, in the computer directions stuff. Originally, when I lived in South Africa, after I left school, I started my own marketing company there, you know, in doing graphics and stuff like that. So that's my background mostly, is the graphics side of stuff. And you know, when I came to Canada, you know, I just moved forward from there, and eventually I ended up in making games, because that's the one thing I really like doing.
So, what inspired you to get into the video game industry?
Well, now let's talk about playing games, because I believe that no game developer cannot play games. You have to be playing games before you can even develop any games. Come on, you know, you have to have some passion into it, because it's a hard job, actually.
Unless you want to create a game called Auto Assault. Which is very famous for the devs not playing their own game.
So originally I started playing Ultima Online. That was my first ever, like, I mean, I must probably play the other little games that weren't massive multiplayer games, but
Marcus,
Ultima Online was my first one.
Have you ever heard of Ultima Online, Marcus?
Oh, jeez.
he doesn't know that game.
Yeah.
No, that's where I cut my teeth as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's my first real experience with like video games and massive multiplayer games, you know. And then I started that. I think it was, I have to remember, 2003, 2004 or something like that. And then I saw World of Warcraft, like after a year of playing Ultima, or 2 years playing Ultima, I saw this game being advertised, and I looked at the graphics and I was blown away. I was like, come on, this can't be the real graphics, because you come from Ultima Online.
Right.
So I started playing World of Warcraft, and I've been playing that, and that really inspired me, I would say. You know, like you can even see at our game that we're making currently, Arkfall, you know, it's very much inspired by the graphic look, feel of World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Did you find as a player of these games that your work suffered while you were playing?
Actually, it's the opposite. You know, as soon as I started making games, you know, I ended up not playing as much anymore, because every time I would play a game, I would be like, I could do something better than this, you know. So you end up, it's actually worked against, you know. Every time you do something, you're like, oh, that'll be perfect in my game, or something similar, you know, or, you know, you get all these ideas flowing and creativity suddenly. So you play for 10 minutes, and then you stop playing game, and then you're working on it.
That's really interesting, man.
Yeah. So, so what was your first game or code or whatever that you actually earned some money on?
Oh, earn some money on. Well, there's two different sides to it. Earning money and making money is two things. Like you could sell because you could sell something and earn say $10, but it cost you $100 to make it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well,
so you actually didn't earn anything, right?
Well, but who of us on our first entrepreneurial venture like knocked it out of the park right off the bat?
Yeah.
It's so rare.
Yeah.
So to be honest, like when I'll give you some backstory. So when we started off, this was in 2007. I started the company, and we jumped right into making massive multiplayer game, which was we shouldn't go on the other way around and start making smaller games and then work our way up.
Right.
But that was what I liked to do and what I wanted to do, because I've experienced mostly out of my gameplay was playing massive multiplayer games. So we started working on that, and at that stage did not realize how much work it is and how much money it takes. And when these guys spend like a couple of $1 million on making a game and they have like 100 people working on it, that is needed, and that's minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started it, I met a gentleman, and this was a very long time ago online actually. Andrew, it was his name. He was a programmer, and I couldn't do a programming side, but I could do all the graphics and all those things. And so I said to him, well, let's start something together. And then that's where we started with NeoJac Entertainment, the company we have right now. And we started developing our first MMO, and eventually we ended up developing software as well to make MMOs.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say our first thing we started making money on was our software, because we were selling that as we were developing it, because we were developing it for ourselves to build our own games. But we decided, to move it to Unreal, and to move it to Unity as the client side, and we had the server side, and then we started selling that to help fund progress, in software, which would eventually that's called Atavism Online.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's the first place we started making a little bit of money.
When you got started in 2007, was it alongside another job or another career?
Oh yeah, through the years I've worked, like normal day jobs and stuff like that.
Okay,
and is that night time you do it?
Has that been in like the tech industry or graphic design or computers?
Mostly graphics, like marketing and stuff like that in that industry, I would say.
Okay, cool. And so when did you transition to it being kind of your full-time gig?
Well, over the years, like I said, I worked at a few places because you have to put money on the table, right? And
right.
Going. So unfortunately.
Yep.
But so I worked a few places, and then I would say about 6 years now, 5-6 years that I've been doing it full time. Now, doing it full time doesn't mean I get a big salary or anything like that.
Sure.
Like up to now, I would say I've been putting in money, out of my own investments, more into it than getting out of it personally. Yep. So of course it's also a passion, but it's because we're making MMOs, it's a long-term thing. Like if we were making something like a small game, it would be you do it, you get it done in 6 months' time or a year's time, and make your money from that. And making MMO, like even Arkfall, we've been working on that now for close to like 3.5-4 years now, and we haven't made any money from it. We've generated money from it, but we haven't made any basically money out of our pockets. But hopefully it will pay out.
Very interesting.
Obviously, that's the goal, to have a successful game.
Yeah, exactly. You wanna be successful and getting some money back from it, but also developing it, like it's passion versus profit.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So let's talk about like, tell me your biggest challenge that you've had to date in in making games and how you overcame it?
Oh, biggest challenge. Well, for me, as a personal challenge, it's always been not having the knowledge of programming. Like I'm a person that likes to do multiple things. Like I've done a lot of things in my lifetime, and I like to be able to be hands-on on everything I do. And a lot of times, I've always had programmers working with me, but it's always I would have loved to have had enough time. It's all about time, right? To go study programming and actually be able to do that. So but the best is always to if you surround yourself with people that know how to do certain things, you can overcome that problem. But for me, it was mostly not being able to do everything in the game, or at least know how to do everything in the game, basically.
Right. I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of people who, if they have aspirations to develop a game and they don't know game programming or feel like they can't learn it, they just stop. Right. So they say, well, I'm not a programmer. I'm never going to be a game developer. Why? What drove you to kind of shake off that narrative and pursue it anyways?
Well, that's the other thing for me. Sometimes I think I'm too much of a go-getter. Like I won't give up on something until it's really you
Right.
really cannot do it. So up until that point, I would keep pushing it forward, even if it's not gonna go anywhere. I don't know, a lot of people.
Yep.
And that's not a good quality, really. It is, but it is
can
also,
be, yeah.
it's in between, right? So
Yes.
it's hard to say when you can't do something, and when somebody says to me I can't do it, then I really want to.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's the thing.
That's actually a trait of a great entrepreneur.
Yep.
Is that knowing when to quit, but also believing in what you're doing and continuing to fight for it, even with when other people are looking at it going, I don't know, buddy. So.
Well, I could say through the years of experience, like when we first started, like I said, 2007, trying to make MMO. Yes, people I've never been in the game industry. Same with my partner at that stage, and we're jumping into this, and people like, you will never make anything of this, like, why are you trying to make an MMO? And at least if nothing else, I've gained quite a bit of knowledge, about how to develop things. And I look at when the first thing we put out there as an MMO game, and I'm looking at what we're putting out now, and I'm like, ooh, I actually learned a few things over these years.
Yeah. That's wonderful. So when you were, we'll say shopping around for a partner in this endeavor, what were your qualifications? Because, I mean, obviously there's a lot of talented programmers and things like that. But how did you know with the people you ended up working with, how did you know that they were a right fit? And did you have to just tell us about that process?
Well, especially for when you're making games, especially when you're just starting. I mean, most people are doing this in their spare time because it's a passion.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not doing it in your spare time and you're working for a company and you're earning money, then you're already in the industry. That's it. You've gotten in there. But if you've never been in it, it's more a passion. So the few things that I always looked at, and even till today, when I get people to work with me and so on, is firstly how can I say it? How dedicated are they to? If somebody comes around, like even today, I get lots of people asking, "Oh, I'll do programming, or I'll do this for you for the game. I'll do this." Like we could right now. I mean, we're not a big company. We only have like 3 people working currently. We've been a little bit bigger at some stages, but we've downsized quite a bit. And but these people are passionate people. Where like I could have 20 or 50 people in the company right now. There's a lot of people offering their work and stuff like that. And through the years, I've said, okay, sure, come do some stuff with us and so on. And eventually they fade away. So first thing is to see how long people stick around. Especially if you're an indie company or an indie game developer, there's a lot of people with passion when they start off and then they just fade away, and that's the biggest thing. And people don't understand when somebody new joins in, it takes a certain amount of time from the current people that's there to invest into the new person to get them up to speed. So, and if they're just going to fade away over a period of a couple of months or something like that, it's not even worth going that route anymore.
Right.
So that's the one thing I've learned, over the years. It's definitely to make sure that if somebody's comes around, wants to do something with you, being paid or not paid, it works both ways, right?
Yeah, that's wonderful. So let's flip the script a little bit. If some of our listeners have kind of aspirations to break into the industry, and maybe they prefer to work for a company like yours rather than like a mega company, what could they do, or what could they, I don't know, have on their resume or in their portfolio to impress you and kind of increase their chances of moving further along in the hiring or interview process?
Well, the first thing is they must be able to play some games. Like, you won't believe how many people I've interviewed or talked to that are programmers wanting to make computer games or artists or whatever, and they have never touched a game in their life.
Really?
Yeah, I actually have found that to be very true with our staff. That's the number one qualification. Do you play MMOs?
Yeah,
No
like
kidding.
why do you want to be in this industry if you don't really have a passion of playing it? If you're not that type of person that spends hours and hours playing already games, like why you want to work in the industry where that's what you're going to be doing pretty much when you're working?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going, okay, check. What next?
Yeah. So that's a one thing I always look at, and then another thing is get out there to be passionate, right? If you say that dedication comes again, right? It's not just dedication to working when you're working with somebody, but it's also dedication to wanting to work there. So, I like we have an artist that joined our team like a couple of months ago, and when I looked at his portfolio and stuff, I was like, man, he's really good. Like, his art is good, but he's not in the industry. He wants to be in it, but he has a passion. You can see he puts a certain amount of hours every week in to his portfolio, which has nothing to do with his day job type of thing. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So then you start seeing, okay, this person has really got that passion to get into it, right? Like, if you're a programmer, program different scenarios in games. Programming is pretty hard to show, what you can do, because you have to program like little games or stuff like that. But
Right.
at the end of the day, with programming, it's when you join a team, and then you can see really how a person is. With the art side of it, it's different, because then you can physically see how the person's art looks. What he does, what he's trying to do. If he's really pushing himself to get out there. A lot of people I see say, like, for instance, artists, they would say, "Oh, we want to be in the industry," but then you look at their portfolio and they got maybe 3 or 4 pieces there, and you're like, like, you really need to work hard. I mean, depending on if it's also paid job, how much money you get from it. It depends also, if you studied. You have to go study in the
Right.
direction, but it's not the most important. I have seen people that never started programming before, and they go and do it, and then they're just brilliant at it.
Yeah. So are these types of jobs, and you can talk about your company or the just industry at large, is the work remotely, work from home stuff on the table? Is that kind of style available, or do you require developers to like come into the office?
So with our company, everybody works from home.
Okay.
I've built it up from the beginning like that, because that's how I like to work. I don't like going to the office, but it takes some passion, and also you have to discipline to get to that stage to do it.
Yeah.
Right? But it makes us a little bit different, I think. Or what we do is we have like a management software that we use that's online. So all our projects are controlled with this. And it's basically, we allow people to work on it. When you get a ticket, like, you can assign a ticket to a person that's doing something, and say, for instance, create this interface or whatever. Assign it to somebody using the software, and then they grab it and they put their hours in, and you got an idea how long certain take. So it's a bit of trust, but it's also, they can work on it when they want to. So everything is built around it. Some companies don't do that. I know in the industry, they require somebody to come in. I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages to both scenarios.
Yep.
So yeah, and I would say a lot of it is moving towards working from home, just because you have a bigger pool of talent that you can choose from.
Absolutely.
So where we are we're in Calgary, Alberta. We have some talent here, but it's not a gaming industry yet.
Right.
It's not like Vancouver. So it's not easy to get people to do game stuff. Everybody wants to, but it's, and you're competing with different salary scales too. If you have a place where there isn't a lot of gaming, but competing with other industries, right?
So talk about that a little bit. Is that pretty typical? Is the gaming developer, salary range, is that pretty competitive with like just typical developers? Is it more, less because it's more niche or whatever? What's your insight on that?
Well, I would say that depends really on the size of your company, right?
Okay.
If you're a big company, and also what you're making, what type of products you make. If you're a bigger company, you could hire like programmers for like 100,000. And if you're smaller, like small indie companies, it goes way down. It's like half that, But
all
then
the way down to free.
Pretty much, yeah. A lot of free work. So it really depends on the size of the company, I would say. And the thing is to get into the market, either somebody and you've studied for X amount of years, and then you get in an entry level, and it's not easy to get into a big company for paying it, or you start working free.
Right.
Yeah. You have to do the legwork there. It's just how
you have to build your resume.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm curious. This is just kind of the inside of the operation is very interesting to me. So we really appreciate your insight. But so outside of developers, artists, what other kind of like full-time jobs is a studio like yours looking for? Like obviously every company will eventually have in-house accountants and boring stuff like that. But like, do you look for someone to do like, new user experience or like story writing or anything outside of kind of the developing and the art?
Yeah. So like once again, it depends on what product you're making.
Right.
Like for us, for MMOs, if you have quests in it, you need the storyline first, and to develop the storyline and the lore and stuff like that. If it's a massive world, if you're making like a little game, like a Pac-Man game, for example, there's no story in that.
Sure.
So I think it all depends on what type of thing. The biggest thing I think that these days, and especially for small indie companies, that's the biggest thing that's lacking, and even we're battling with that right now, because we're so small, is the fact that media, getting your name out, and social media and all those things. Yeah, marketing. That's like one of the most important people you need to have, basically. And that's the thing that usually lacks, especially in a small company. Everybody's doing so many different things, and then you're like, oh, do I spend 10 hours marketing material, or do I spend 10 hours in developing the game? Like you have to like decide, do you first make the game and make it really good and then look at marketing, or but eventually you should do, it will be like a crossover, more or less.
Right. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So cool. So do you said you guys are a pretty small team. Do you have plans to grow to kind of fill those roles, or are you happy with where you guys are at for the kind of the short-term future?
Well, we would like to have 100 people working for us.
Sure.
So we would like to fill all those roles, but it all goes around, how much money you have and budgeting and stuff like that. Like the biggest thing for us, the most important thing is we don't mind starting small and growing. Like every as long as we are growing the game in amount of players, then we're doing good.
Cool.
Doesn't mean if we're making money or anything like that, or we have a lot of people working on it. It's the fact to firstly to stay afloat and keep going, And the second thing is then to make sure that your graphs and everything is going upwards, like gaining. I find a lot of game these days. A lot of companies come out with ideas, games.
Right.
They would say this is a brilliant idea, whatever. They would sell it. They would get huge amount of money. Like to be honest, we haven't got any funding, any big corporation or anything like that. We had opportunities for it, but I didn't want to go that way.
Cool.
So there's two sides to it, and they get all this money. They're developing it. They get a couple of million. They start making the game. There's a lot of hype in it. They bring it out, and then instead of it growing from there, it actually goes downwards because they started a big high peak, and then it starts tapering down. Where I had a different way of looking at it. I wanted to start at a low peak and slowly, going upwards. Like you want to gain. If you're gaining people, then you're doing something.
Wow. Okay, man, that's
a good
awesome.
long-term, slow and steady, but growth.
Yeah, you want to have growth.
So, Arkfall. Now, this is your current game that you're working on, and it's an MMO. Give us just a quick overview of what this game is.
So, Arcfall is a MMO. It's a sandbox MMO. You can pretty much do anything you want to do in it, but you can gather resources. You can do the basic stuff, killing mobs, doing quests. There's a few quest systems in place. You can own a house. You can build your own house up. I would say, a lot of people have compared it like it's like if World of Warcraft and RuneScape had a baby. They said,
yeah.
Although I haven't played much of RuneScape, so I wouldn't know too much about it. But that's what we get feedback from a lot of players.
Yeah.
So we try to do a little bit of everything that we want, what we like.
Is Arkfall, now you previously made a game engine called Atavism. Is Arkfall running on that?
Yes, Arkfall it's purely using Atavism as its engine, its backend engine. So Atavism is a really good engine that we developed. Like because we were making games, I found that we knew what people developing games want to have in the engine and the flexibility. So that's why it was nice developing games and making the engine, because you could put in things that a lot of engines, and I look at it, it sometimes feels like the people making the engines has never developed a game in their life, because the things they put in. But so Atavism is a MMO engine backend. It's the server side. Currently, it's on Unity, and I think they're looking at putting it on Unreal Engine as well. So it uses Unity as the client side, and then you have your backend server side, and it's really amazing software. Like I would say that there's so many applications you can do, not just for games, but in other industries as well. And so we developed that since 2007. We were working on it. I would say about 2-3 years ago, we sold it to another company, Dragonsan. The reason we sold it is one of the big reasons was our lead developer that was working, like my partner, we were working on it. He wanted to get out of the industry a little bit. He had some things that he wanted to do. So when he left, I said, let's give it to somebody that can take it further, the engine further, because that's the main idea. You want to have a really good engine, and then these guys have been working with it for a long time, so we sold it to them, and they've been developing it and doing pretty good with it. Actually, they've increased the quality of it and everything like that majorly.
Yeah, and so you benefit from that as well.
Yeah, we have some deals with them, and so we get the benefits of whatever development they're doing with the engine. So basically, it ends up. I still get what I wanted to do originally, which is making games, but I still have all the advantages of the engine that we've started developing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's good. You've built a solid foundation there.
Yeah, it works good. And I mean, I think they've got last I saw, they had maybe 10 people on their staff, and they're all programming engineers and that.
So tell me about your journey with Neosland.
So when we started off,
Neosland is being a game for those of you who are listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was So we've gone through like 3 different types of games, not types, but three games we're working on. First, it was when we started 2007. It's all been MMOs. So we started. That's why I say it's a learning curve. We took a lot of time to learn stuff, and also to see what the markets wanted. So we started with Islands of War, which was our first one that we wanted to make. That's 2007. We didn't know anything much how to make anything, and we worked on it. We developed the engine and so on, but that we didn't go anywhere. Like any company, I guarantee you, they have a few things that didn't work for them, like a game before you get the big one, right? Mm-hmm. Even World of Warcraft, if I look at the history, they've gone through a few iterations of games before they even hit it somewhere. Then we went to Neo's Land, which we worked with you, Markee, and we wanted to develop that MMO, but we saw that when we made Arkfall as a demo, just to test a few things out, and we ended up having more fun with that, how we designed and how that looked and everything, that we did then with Neo's Land. But then when we brought it out, it sometimes happens like that. When you do something, the longer you do something, the better you get at certain things. And then with Neo's Land, we invested a lot of money into it, and eventually we decided no, we can't go further with it because the amount of interest that we had in it wasn't as great as we had with a little demo that we made, and that's why we ended up moving everything to Arkfall instead of concentrating it on one product and making it really good. And also because we looked at the market and stuff, there wasn't as much interest in Neo's Land as there was in Arkfall. So sometimes you have to make a business decision. We would like to make all the MMOs there is, but...
Man, so let me ask you, when you decided to do that, after all the effort you put into it, were there people on their team or were there even thoughts kind of in your own head saying like, we cannot abandon this after all this time?
Well, that's where it comes through. And I said to you, I'm a person that likes to keep going even at all odds, right? And then sometimes you do something and you're like, oof, I should have stopped this like maybe a year ago, So let's put it this way. On Neo's Land, I think we put in more than like cash money, about $60,000 to $80,000. That's money that I had put into it myself, personal money.
Right. That's a lot.
And then we did do some fundraising on it and stuff like that, but it wasn't close to that amount. I think we got like something like $10,000.
Okay.
Right. So it's not a lot of money, but that being said, the amount of work we put in, right? Like there was a lot of work, and you just write it off, basically.
Yeah.
Like you spend 3 years working on something, and you're literally writing off 3 years. So it's not an easy decision to make, but sometimes you have to make those decisions, right? Like even with Arkfall, originally it was a top-down game, and we had good interest in the beginning with it too, but it wasn't what we really wanted to make right off the bat, because that was, like I said, it was first a demo. We just wanted to test a few systems out because we were making the engine still, and we had to try and do top down, and then it was so much interest in it. We started off with making it top down, but then I said, you know what, I'm going to hit the bullet again, because you want to have something out there that's as good as you can make it.
Right.
I am so happy to see the horizon in that game, because I do remember trying it with top down and I was like, meh.
Yeah, like it's a passionate thing too, and I like 3D and I like the things. And top down worked nicely at that stage because Unity wasn't as good as it is right now. And even at this stage, it's still hard to develop because you have to develop because when we're developing, we have to develop to what the best we can get with our client side, right? Our server side has no problem. But the client side is the problem usually when it comes to frame rates and stuff. People sometimes don't understand that, But so I went top down with Unity because a lot of frame rate drops and stuff comes from if you view something in a distance. So if you're looking down at something, then you don't have that much frame problems and stuff like that. And also the development spectrum. But Unity upgraded their system a little bit. And then I decided, you know what, I'm just so I basically wrote off, because when you go from one view to another view, you can use the assets, but you can't reuse the world you build and stuff like that. So even Arkfall, the current world, is only about, I would say, a year and a half years old.
Interesting.
Like 30. So once again, I took the bullet there, said, you know what, I'm just going the other way around. And then that's how we ended up where we are. Sometimes you have to take the bullet and just go do it.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So is Arcfall open to the public now? It's available for everyone. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So it's free to play. It's in pre-alpha, and you can get it on Steam. So if you just go search on Steam Arcfall, you can actually jump on it and have a go at it.
Very good.
Yeah. Then if you really like it, you can buy stuff through our store and use the discount code podcast. Save yourself a few bucks, support the podcast here. So Jacques, what is your moonshot?
What are we aiming for?
Well, like if resources and money, which is a kind of a resource, were unlimited to you, what would you do?
Well, like I said before, it's for me, like we've been developing the games, with very limited budget. We've had interest in people putting a lot of money into it, like investors, like a couple of $100,000 and stuff like that. But then you lose control. Firstly, you lose a lot of the percentage of the game. Basically, you're working for those people.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's why I never really wanted to go that way. I mean, I get it that they want to need to make money out of it too, but that's a big thing that been a problem for me. I mean, everybody's got a price. Believe me, I've got a price too.
Right.
Let's be honest now. So, but the nice thing is, once again, because we were going that way and getting big investments into it, we could switch from top down to 3D without having to deal with investors and stuff like that.
Right.
So that gave us, that's a good example of giving us freedom. But if we had all the funding we could do, like I look at a lot of these games that gets big funding. It's like people, they go on Kickstarter or whatever, they get like 5-10 million. And I'm looking at that, and I'm looking at my budget, and I'm looking what we've made, and I'm looking at what they are making with their budgets, and blown away sometimes.
Yeah.
How do they have such a huge budget and have a product that's a little bit better than mine, or even worse than mine? Then I'm
Right.
like, so I would say if we had unlimited or money wasn't the problem, I'll definitely be making a really good game.
If you had to look back, 15 or 20 years before you started making games, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, start earlier. That's what I would say. Go start earlier and be passionate about what you're doing and get going in that direction. Like I'm sad that I mean, everything is life experience. You can't, like, even us stopping making certain game stuff, there's still a certain amount of experience we've gained, which is worth something at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So everything is life experience. But the sooner you can get into something that you really like doing, the better it is. The better you get at it. It just, practice makes perfect. That's one of the things I always say to my son. Like anything you do, if you're not as good as somebody else, it just means you have to practice harder and work. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
But you can be as good as anybody else.
So I have just one more question for you, and I think we'll wrap this up. And this question is not related to the video game industry. It's not related to anything but whatever is on your mind. And so, Jacques, what currently is the most important thing to you?
I would say family. Like the biggest thing is family. Like if you look at NeoJac, I have one son. He's 16 years old, and his name is Neo. So That's where the name comes from. Neo, cool. And my name is Jacques, so it's NeoJac. But yeah, cool. At the end of the day, that money and all those things are important. Let's be honest. Without money, you can't live. But it still comes down. If you have all those things, what would you want to have next? Is you want to have your family with you, or that's that type of social or connection with somebody. So for me, family, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
All right. So Jacques, if people want to check out your stuff, Arkfall is the game, Arcfall. And then NeoJac.com, NeoJac.com, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Excellent.
Cool.
So,
and yeah, don't forget.
Go ahead.
Yeah, don't forget that you can buy stuff for Arkfall in the Markee Dragon store at markeedragon.com. Coupon code podcast really helps support the show. So and saves you a few bucks.
So, yeah, thank you, Jacques, for your time. Really appreciate it. I especially appreciate your life experience that you've shared with us.
Yeah, man. That's really insightful. Really, really insightful.
Well, thanks a lot for having me. So on the show. So
yeah,
you guys do a great job, and it's good to, I think the more people speak to other people and get more insight in the industry, the better it'll get.
Yeah, I'm excited to give this a try and see just how the development of the game continues. So we wish you, of course, all the luck in the world. So
thank you.